So today we're going to be talking about how you find the perfect blend between AI and storytelling, which is, as you and I both know, a long considered powerful tool in learning. It's literally what the video arts product is built off of, specifically, I guess, around the hilarity that comes with human error and getting things wrong, and how it's that the story and the mistake and the experience that makes for the relatable, engaging learning. With all your wealth of experience in learning design, what are your thoughts on storytelling? Why do you think it's such a great tool in learning?
Storytelling is a really powerful tool because it also helps people to imagine themselves in the situation, to immerse themselves in it, and they can see what's happening in front of them. And as you can see, as you were saying, they can see the mistakes that are happening, and they might think, "Oh, I did that," or "Oh, Betty did that the other day," or and this is how it played out. And so by being able to see these things play out, see these examples and these stories in front of them, they can then find it more relatable to their own experiences and really apply it in their day-to-day life.
And yeah, I guess I definitely find this when obviously to plug video ups when I watch our content, but just generally when you see something happen that you have done yourself, or someone who's like that, say you've got a colleague or someone it is just more engaging, isn't it? Because you're entertained. You're like, yes, I know this. I can, like you just said, you can put yourself in it, which is a hard thing to recreate, I think, without that sort of human element.
Yeah, I mean, the human element is really important. And I think one of the things video arts does well is having this diverse range of different situations that people can engage with as part of their learning, which is really cool. But yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah. And I suppose we have to address the elephant in the room, as it were, of the introduction of AI, because a lot of the conversation at the moment is specifically around, obviously, AI-generated content, but people using that in learning and sort of, at least from a distance, it seems like people are just en masse going, oh, great, AI can just create all this content for us. And there's naturally concerns on the other side that you will lose that sort of specific human element of learning. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, you're right. There is a lot of AI content creation going on out there at the moment in the L&D space. And that is one of the ways that AI can be used. It can be used to speed up certain things like content creation or image generation, things like that. But it can also be used to enhance training in other ways. So instead of creating, more kind of standardized AI-generated content, you could enhance your existing training by adding in an AI conversation. So where the learner can have a conversation with the AI where they can actually experience the situations themselves or practice what they're learning about to make it more real for them. You can immerse them in the story if you like.
Yeah, would you say I guess that's an important distinction to make then, that there are two, not to get the two conflated of the two uses of AI, because it does, like I said, from a distance, it seems like there's just this mass, great, AI can do everything for us then.
Yeah, but just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
But I agree. It is important not to conflate the two. And like AI is a really creative tool. It's so fantastic at storytelling. I mean, one of the first ways that I actually used AI was to create bedtime stories for my little boy.
Oh, nice.
It was very cool. It was this great app where you could create the story and it would also generate images. So in this case, it was Liam and Techno Shark, a new superhero, going on adventures together. And I thought it was great because it was creating this really creative, interesting story in minutes. It was fantastic. And that's great as a parent because you sort of start to run out of ideas for bedtime stories after a while if you have to make them up in your head.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of parents can relate to that. But in this case, I was like, wow, that was so fast. That was great. But what my son really connected with was he was in the story. And because he was part of the story, he paid more attention. He loved it a lot more. He loved the picture of him and Techno Shark going on adventures together. So putting the human into the story using the AI is just such a powerful way of using that technology, because it can just make it so much more real for people and so much more exciting.
Yeah, exactly. If you had one with like the AI is enhancing the human element, but if you didn't have that human part of it, it wouldn't be as engaging. Yeah. I've just got this image of you like super techno mum, like trying to, how can I make these amazing, interesting bedtime stories for my child? I'd just be trying to look through a bunch of books instead. But Yeah, that's really cool. I've actually seen, spoilers here, a little picture of TechnoShart as well. I can see it's very impressive. So in terms of the benefits then, I guess, of AI in learning, what would you say for you are kind of the core ones that are worth noting?
Yeah, I mean, I think using AI to enhance existing training is really powerful because the learner can have conversations with the AI which can be personalised to their own experience. So they could share where they worked, what they do day to day, and then the examples that they can talk about with the AI can be for their workplace, for their own experience, for their own role, rather than it needing to be, something that could apply to lots and lots of people. It can become hyper personalised. And I think that's one of the really big strengths of using the AI in the learning.
Yeah.
And I think one of the other ones is that it's very non-judgmental, very non-pressuring. People can take the opportunity to practice different ways of doing things that they might not want to do in the real world for very understandable reasons. But that gives them the chance to actually see, well, how would this play out if I responded in this way instead of that way? What happens if I push that button or don't with that person? And yeah, being able to practice in an anonymous, low pressure environment is a really good way of, really exercising your new skills that you're learning. So.
Yeah, because that's a really kind of, what we see is a really big barrier to learning often is just that fear of getting things wrong, which of course, we know in hindsight, you're like, oh, making a mistake or getting something wrong is actually what helps you learn ultimately. But it's different when people's feelings are involved or you're trying to see how having a difficult conversation, say it's around mental health or something at work, it can be... really scary to try and think, well, how do I practice? I would be the same. I'd be nervous because you don't want to say the wrong thing, do you? So I can really see how AI can benefit in those scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, the stakes would be really high, particularly with things like mental health or performance reviews or, giving negative feedback. I mean, all of these are really challenging situations in the workplace. And yeah, you don't want to stuff that up when you do it because there's another person involved and their life and their work and their feelings. And so being able to practice in a lower stakes environment where you can get it wrong and the consequences aren't dire, that's a really powerful thing to be able to do, and practice it as many times as you want as well. I mean, when you're at an in-person workshop, sometimes people will do role plays. I personally find those a little bit uncomfortable because I'm a bit shy, but I mean, I've seen them work really well and that's fantastic, but you can't do that all day. And also you might be a bit nervous about trying different things in that sort of environment where other people can see you and judge you for what you're doing, and you're with your colleagues at your workplace and they're all hearing what you're saying. So there's still a certain amount of, I want to get it right. But if you're working with an AI helper, it's not the same, because the AI is not going to judge you. It's not going to go and tell your boss what you said or anything like that. So there's that strength to it as well. Yeah.
And also because I find role play scenarios in person they can be a bit cringe as well, but I think they also often cater to a certain, I don't say a certain type of person, but I think if you're naturally more introverted or you like being more prepared, having a scenario where something is very spontaneously sort of thrust, oh, okay, go and do this, often with people you barely know, I find those things quite stressful, and I would not consider myself introverted as such, but I think maybe that's another thing that people don't necessarily initially think would be a benefit of having an AI integration or something in learning as well.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I mean, being able to also personalise the AI to the person that they're speaking to in terms of how they address them, and, how direct or indirect they are with the feedback and things like that is also really powerful. So being able to calibrate the way that the AI interacts with the learner is another really interesting way that you can make things more impactful, more immersive, less confrontational.
Yeah.
All of these things can help people to learn better. If they're not stressing out about how they're being told to do something or who's listening, then, the learning can happen a lot more easily.
Yeah. If you're not trying to manage your emotions because someone's just given you some really brutally honest feedback. Sometimes you just need a minute to stomach that before you can process, okay, what am I supposed to be learning here? But so with AI, to play devil's advocate here, a lot of the kind of concern at the moment, at least that you see in the sort of echo chamber that is LinkedIn, is around homogenize content, because like I said earlier, it does feel like the main use of AI at the minute is to mass roll out loads of content. And there are concerns, of course, that that's going to impact the effectiveness of learning. Are we just going to end up with all this avatar or talking head AI generated content that looks the same, sounds the same, isn't that different from one company to the next? It's obviously stuff that we talk about with the type of content that we make at Video Arts. Obviously, like I said, playing devil's advocate, but what do you think, that's a real possibility of happening? Do you think that's something we should be concerned about in learning?
Yeah, I mean, it is happening. I mean, that's
Yeah.
it's inevitable. Everyone's using the same foundational models and the same sort of techniques to produce the content. And I guess it's a reason why I'm not as, I mean, there's a place for using AI in content generation, absolutely, and curation and personalised learning pathways. These are all fantastic use cases. But I think if you overdo it and you go too far, you know, then you can end up in a similar situation to death by PowerPoint, can't you? I mean, this isn't a new problem. Every time there's a new technology, there are going to be some people who overdo it and they'll put 500 words on their PowerPoint slide and everyone will fall asleep. I mean, this is just the way it is. But with content creation, I think it's just a question of getting the balance right to avoid that, you know, homogenization. And also, like in the space that I'm in, where you're using it to enhance the existing content by encouraging interaction. I think that's a really powerful space to be in, because it's different every time. The content's dynamic. You know, imagine being able to talk to the video avatar and have, instead of having it just read a script. I mean, how cool would that be? Or like having a couple of video characters in the room and being able to interact with them. That's really interesting, and that's the sort of space that we're really excited about.
So what would be some practical examples from your experience of how you can actually use AI in learning?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really great examples in the space that I'm working in, which is the AI-led teaching. So, for example, you could have the AI build custom scenarios for a person to practice a particular skill based on their workplace or the industry that they work in.
Oh, okay.
So you could have like different scenarios that they can work their way through to practice their skills in assertiveness or running a performance review or something like that. And they can be quite fun. When we're testing those, we often will test them with things that stretch the boundaries a bit, like, you know, I'm an astronaut, I'm a pirate. Sometimes when you say you're a pirate, it will also talk like a pirate, which is really fun. That's pretty good for customization and personalization.
Yeah, very engaging as well, I can imagine.
So scenarios are one really interesting way of doing it, but there's lots of others as well. So, for example, you could pit yourself against a character. So you might have a difficult customer that you're trying to deal with, or you might have a difficult employee or colleague that you're trying to deal with, and they can have particular characteristics. So you might have the person who's very aggressive or very direct when they want to get their own way, or you might have the person who says yes but they actually mean no, which is very tricky to deal with. And, you know, the AI can help you to really practice those specific skills and immerse yourself in a particular story that allows you to then play that out in a really safe context. So that's very cool.
I was thinking, actually, we do utilise those in the Video Arts chatbot, because we have some characters of those in our content from our previous collection. So yeah, it's really interesting actually how you can create that sort of environment.
Yeah, but when it comes to, you know, the way you're using AI and storytelling in your learning, the sky's the limit. It's really what can you imagine, and that's really what you can do, and that's why it's such an exciting space. Yeah,
which really does relates nicely actually to then bringing it back to kind of storytelling and the human connection side of learning, and why it's so important not to completely lose that, because that is really, like, from what you're saying, what helps make the AI so valuable in learning is the human experience behind it. We're trying, like you said, to enhance real life scenarios. If we didn't have those in the first place, then it wouldn't work the same. And I think it's really, I guess, when we're talking about storytelling and not sort of overly relying on it, it's important to remember that it is the human side of things, of seeing yourself in a scenario and being able to relate to an example is really what makes AI work better. I don't know if I phrased that properly, but
No, I reckon you have. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's drawing out the human element and making that more prominent using the AI. Like, absolutely. And it's really that ability to immerse the learner in a story that's like very relevant and specific to their own context. It really helps the learning to stick. And that's what's exciting about it is, you know, with the training that we had previously, you could have these great stories, but you don't necessarily know if it's always going to land with everyone. But with the AI, you can add this extra level where you can make it land. You can make them part of the story, part of the experience, and that really magnifies and amplifies the human element and really makes it a part of their, you know, their day-to-day, so to speak.
And would you say then that is kind of the perfect blend? Of course, there's no such thing as perfect, but to, again, play devil's advocate with our customers who are perhaps, like we've said previously, not sure where to start, or AI feels like this sort of abstract thing that they can't quite put a, like a purpose to. Yeah. Would you say that's the perfect way to kind of have both? So have AI and utilize it, acknowledge that it's valuable and can be great for XYZ, but not lose the value of where really the core learning takes place, which is in the stories and the human experience. Would you say that's how you achieve it?
Yeah, I think it's really looking at the strengths of the AI and what you're looking to strengthen in the learning experience and trying to bring those two together. I mean, generative AI is amazing because it's got such great creative and storytelling abilities. And so if you really want to draw that out in your learning and make it more part of the process, you can amplify that human experience, you can amplify that storytelling, and you can really make it a real thing for people. And I think that's where it's a really exciting space, is bringing the two together in a way that makes sense. So not creating things that, as you were saying before, are like a cookie cutter, but really using it to hyper-personalise and make it a really immersive experience.
Yeah. And talking of human experience and human connection, a huge part of us as humans and how we exist is our emotions. And some people are more emotional than others. I'll throw my hands up there. But it's a huge part of how we are and how we interact. And it is a big part as well of what sometimes makes certain scenarios at work, like you talked about performance reviews or giving feedback. In your experience, how does AI handle that and kind of take on board human emotions?
Yeah, and there's also the question of, can AI realistically mimic human emotions as well, I suppose.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole other thing to consider. But I mean, in my experience, if you give it the right guidance effectively, then it can do a really good job at mimicking human emotions and behaviour. And it's obviously only ever going to mimic, and that's fine, but mimic very realistically. But it can also be really good at responding to people when they express emotion. So, for example, we at LawCPD, we have a course on bullying and harassment, and inside that course there's an AI conversation that asks people to refer to an example of bullying that they've witnessed in their workplace or heard about from someone else, and to analyse that and, why do you think this is an example of bullying? How does it meet the criteria? Because in this case, it's a legal definition that we're trying to look at.
Yeah.
And in that conversation, the AI will often respond very compassionately to people when they share their examples of bullying. And people have commented on that in their feedback. So they've said things like, I was really impressed with how empathetic it was when I shared an example of bullying from my own workplace. I was really surprised by how it was sensitive to what I was sharing. And it is really interesting because if you give the AI the right guidance, the right guardrails, the right parameters, it can respond very appropriately to human emotion. So that's been a really interesting part of our learning journey, because it's not necessarily something I expected to see, but yeah, it's been really cool.
Yeah. No, that's nice to know, because again, you kind of, the stereotype is that you have this sort of unfeeling, very robotic robot that you're talking to, which of course I can appreciate not everyone wants to learn. When we're talking about emotional experiences as well, no one wants to learn from an unfeeling thing. So it's nice to know that those capabilities are there, basically. And yeah, I was just thinking as well, when you're talking about in terms of how valuable human experience is in all of this, is ultimately kind of what you were saying earlier about how AI should be a support to storytelling and human experience and be used to enhance, is because ultimately what we learn best through are the scenarios where things don't go perfectly as planned and things go a bit wrong, or you have to, the nature of being human is that things are unpredictable. I was just thinking when you're talking that that's quite a good way of looking back at how it's important to remember that AI is there to support rather than to be fully relied on, and it can be really effective in those things. But ultimately, like, experience is what's going to kind of help pave your way in life, I suppose, which does actually relate nicely to the theme of this podcast and Live and Learn, which is, sharing mistakes and experiences and how they kind of get you to where you are today. We ask all of our guests this. Do you have any experiences you're comfortable sharing in your career where things maybe haven't gone to plan, but, it all worked out for the better now?
Yeah, definitely a few of those, as we all do. Honestly, one of the more recent technology-related live and learn examples that I've got from my recent history is during COVID in Australia, we all had to go into lockdown. I was in Western Australia, so we had some very aggressive lockdowns in the beginning, and our whole team was working remotely for 6 months. And during that time, it was quite difficult because people felt isolated, but we'd do regular video calls with each other, so I'd be checking in with people every day. And what I would do to try and lighten the mood was I'd always have a different backdrop for my video. So sometimes I would be on the Millennium Falcon, and sometimes I'd be outside a hobbit hole, and people would have a little laugh and they'd feel a bit better. And that was all very well and good, right up until I had an external client meeting and I forgot that I was sitting in front of a hobbit hole. So that was super awkward. Yeah. So I learned my lesson about checking the little preview as you go into the meeting and making sure that I've configured it correctly, because it's all very well and good to have this mindfulness about improving the culture for your own people internally, but you also need to think about the professionalism you're projecting to others outside the organisation. And fortunately, this person was a big Lord of the Rings fan, so I was okay.
Oh, you were fine there.
But would not want to make that mistake with someone else. So,
no,
yeah.
I've just got this hilarious image, little head in front of Bilbo's door.
Exactly that.
Yeah. Oh, well, it makes for a funny anecdote further on in life. So.
Yes, and burned into my brain, so I'm always checking these things in the future.
You'll never make that mistake again.
No.
So. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing your experience. And it's been great.
Thanks for having me, Alice. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks.